get started, right? Okay, I'm going to use my hand microphone. So I'm Anat Berger. I'm a physics professor. I'm also in the environment program. And if you've never been to our roundtable series, you know, problems in the environment are complex. They're inherently interdisciplinary. And that's what we want to do here is once a month have a topic that we talk about as a community, right? And become as informed as possible, but also have back and forth discussion, dialogue, ask questions. Each one of you will be required to ask 10 questions because you're taking the place of, the limit. Okay, so just keep in mind that we want to ask questions from our speakers, right? We're limiting their time, really, just so that we can have some Q&A afterwards. Okay, so with that, I want to start introducing our speakers. So I got introduced to Taya because my student, Ayana Smith, she actually couldn't be here. She worked with you guys over the summer because I think you guys put out a call for student workers over the summer. So she told me she had such an amazing experience and I was so fascinated. So we really want to hear about your organization, where it started from, what you guys are hoping to accomplish, your hopes and your dreams. And really that's maybe the most important goal of the Roundtable series is to talk about career opportunities, ways that we as community members, as students, as following their careers, how can we get involved and how can we make a difference? So I'm going to turn it over to you. You can tell us more about the Water Collaborative.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Start off, I'm Taya Fontenette, and I'm the Policy and Research Coordinator with the Water Collaborative of Greater New Orleans. And today, I'm just going to do a pretty big overview of our water quality testing program and all of the research that we've done on water contamination in Louisiana's surface and groundwater. So to start off, I want to introduce a bit of my career path to see how I got here, especially as an early career professional. So I am a New Orleans native. I went to school at Lusher Charter down the street, graduated in 2018, and went all the way to Boston, Massachusetts to get my Bachelor's of Science in Environmental Science and a minor in Political Science from Northeastern University. I am also a pandemic grad, as you can see from the years, so my college experience was a bit different than I wanted it to be. But luckily, I was able to study abroad before the shutdown, and I did a Dialogue of Civilizations, which is a short-term study abroad program that we offer. So I did coastal sustainability challenges in Southeast Asia and New England. So over the course of 5.5 weeks, I traveled to 4 countries in collaboration with the University of Hong Kong and did some water quality research, which was honestly, looking back, some of the greatest experiences of my life. So that first picture, you can see us. That's actually our first day in Hong Kong. So that's us testing for water quality in Victoria Harbor. And so then after that, I took a gap year, reeling over just how crazy the pandemic was. And at that time, I returned to New Orleans and I did an agricultural apprenticeship at Grodat Youth Farm in the city, which was a great time to reconnect with the community and learn about agriculture. After that, right on the year in, at the end of my gap year, I was offered a position with the National Wildlife Federation to support their outreach with the Restore the Mississippi River Delta Coalition and the passing of Louisiana's Coastal Master Plan. So after 6 months as an intern, I was upgraded to a fellow as a full-time position. And then right at the end of that year mark exactly, I was offered a position as Policy and Research Coordinator with the Water Collaborative, which I have been at for just short of 2 years now. And then last summer, I decided it'd be great to start my online master's in public administration back at Northeastern. And I'm also working to get a grad certificate in public policy analysis with all of my research really surrounding environmental policy. So I live and breathe environmental science and policy, and I'm doing exactly what I want to do, which is great to do at this term in my career. So then just a bit of a recap about the Water Collaborative. We are a small local nonprofit organization. We were founded in 2013 following the Greater New Orleans Urban Water Plan. In 2017, we were incorporated into a nonprofit organization. And in 2019, our executive director, Jessica Dandridge-Smith, was appointed, and she is really our one who steers the organization to what it is today. And in 2020, we were able to achieve our 501c3 status, which really was the start of the organization as we began to secure funding, expand our staff, and start to develop our key programs. And then I joined about 3 years short of that. So our mission really is to help the greater New Orleans region learn to live and thrive with water, because it's only going to be an increasing part of our life, and that we already have a unique relationship with it being in the city. So as of 2025, we have 8 full-time staff members, at least 3 contractors, and we have a network of fellows and interns that help us do all the great work that we do. And of our staff, we're split into 3 departments. We have policy and research, engagement and outreach, and operations. So our water quality testing and awareness program is just one of very many. So a few that I wanted to highlight today was one that we are a Region 6 EPA urban water management partner. And so we work to make sure that the voices of the community organizers and community members in the region are able to reach the federal level. We also have our Brackish Artist Residency, which we just did our 2nd cohort this early year. And that's where we get a lot of artists and we take them out into the environment, into coastal areas to teach them about coastal restoration and water management problems so that they can create accessible artwork for the public to learn about these challenges through. And we also have our Water Justice Fund, which is especially important this year. It is our way that we're advocating for an equitable drainage fee throughout the city so that tax-exempt properties can also pay into our drainage system, and that we can have a more equitable fee that is also more forgiving for residents who live in the city. So we have tons and tons of programs, and I'm sure I'm missing 1 or 2. And especially my favorite, which is a little biased, is my water news blog that I run, where we also post any relevant policy briefs and news articles and just urgent matters to get it out to the public that we try to share across the city. So we'll get into our water quality program and into why is water quality testing important. And I'm sure that we all know in the room how important it is for not only public health, but for environmental health as well. And that unfortunately contamination risks do still persist in our drinking water. I do have to say that federal standards that are set for drinking water that are implemented by utilities are not always health-based standards, but they are standards at which the utilities can achieve certain levels of contamination. So it's always good to see the difference between those 2 points. And that the issue is not simply just exposure, it's about long-term continuous exposure to certain contaminants that can have effects on public and environmental health. And as we know, at the end of the lower Delta region of the Mississippi River, Southeast Louisiana has faced a lot of unique challenges. So first, many of the southeastern parishes do rely on the Mississippi River for drinking water, at least from Ascension all the way to Plaquemines, that is the case. We are also at the bottom of the Mississippi River, which drains 40% of the continental U.S.'s water, is the water that we are drinking. And it does not help at all that we are also in the industrial corridor, which has some of the highest cancer rates in the nation, that is polluting our air, water, and our soil. And so then there are also many emerging contaminants that are coming up that are harder and harder for treatment plants to be able to maintain their efficiency over all of these contaminants. And then for specifically New Orleans, we have some of the oldest infrastructure in the nation when it comes to our water system, with many pipes being over 100 years old, which I'm sure we all saw being replaced on Playboy in the past few months. And so there's a lot of issues that can be added on that all realize why it's so hard to have good water quality in Southeast Louisiana and why it's so important to advocate for it. So water quality testing identifies risks and empowers residents to be able to take action, to advocate for stronger protections, and we try to see ourselves as the guide to help residents do that. So here is an overview of our testing program. So far, we have completed 3 studies. 1 has been on the river and 2 has been residential studies. We're testing for metals and PFAS. And so for all 3 of our studies, We had trained fellows that collected and delivered all of our samples. And so when we mean training, we mean multiple days of in-house training with the Water Collaborative, where we teach the fellows from local universities, which we're so lucky to have someone like Ayana from Loyola join. But we teach them about the contaminants, the collection process, and about the environmental injustices that Louisianians face on a daily basis. We also had all of our samples were tested by PACE Analytical Laboratories, and we made sure everything was under EPA certified testing methods. For our residential studies, we had to shift gears because that meant that residential outreach and education had to start before the report release. So that meant that we were collaborating with and communicating with community and neighborhood organizations, as well as vetting every single potential participant to see if they were interested in being involved and if they wanted us to enter their homes. And then actually having to go through and schedule each appointment with every single resident and matching it with all of our fellow schedules. So for that, what we did differently is that we made sure we got our results back to our residents within 3 weeks of collection. And then for every participant, we offered either a gift card or a filter so they can have immediate relief from contaminants, or that they can use the gift card to supplement their funding for a more substantial system. And then throughout the entire process, for residents who participated or did not, we served as an educational resource with them being able to contact us at all times, and even going so forth as working with them to fit and pick the best filter that works for their household. Which was a great experience to make sure that everyone had a very complete experience testing with us. So our first study was in 2022, and this was before I joined the team, but we tested for PFAS contaminants as well as BTEX and 1,4-dioxane. This was about a few weeks of testing from June to July of 2022. We had 6 trained fellows that collected water and soil samples directly from the banks of the Mississippi, and this was from 9 parishes from Point Coupé all the way down to Orleans, and we had 31 sites sampled. And our key findings was that PFAS was detected at 5 of the 31 sites. We found PFBA and PFOS, and then I have those rankings down there. The most significant, of course, is PFOS due to the amount of research that is done on that contaminant. And our highest found was 5.37 parts per trillion. And while these results are significant, lower detection is what we suspect that this is because of 2 main reasons. One is how great the flow of water is at this part of the river. It's very high, and as well as the sampling locations being on the banks of the river instead of midstream could have affected our results. So we were able to at least showcase and find evidence of PFAS in our surface water in Louisiana. So next, we have our 2024 Orleans Parish lead testing study. So this was last summer, and we did this with lead and copper over the course of 16 weeks from May to September. With our sampling outreach, this is how we reached out to community and neighborhood organizations to get as many people to sign up as possible. We had 7 fellows collect samples directly from kitchen sinks so that we can understand the contamination that people are being exposed to from when they're regularly drinking and cooking. So we were able to test 144 households across 37 neighborhoods in the parish, and we even contacted 289 individual residents for this endeavor. And so our key findings was that lead was detected, and that is supposed to be 0.25 parts per billion. So at least 0.25 parts per billion in 83% of our samples. Our highest lead detection was 70 parts per billion, and that was in a first liter sample. We did take 2 samples from each home to see if this contamination was coming from internal plumbing or from the city's service line. And from these results, we found that 15 samples from 11 households exceeded the EPA's action level of 15 parts per billion, which is unfortunate. And we were fortunate enough to be able to inform these residents of this exceedingly high lead levels that were released. And no significant data was found on our copper levels, even though a few households did show some evidence of leaching copper pipes. They were all in reasonable levels. And this full report was released on October 12, 2024. And this was to coincide with the deadline by the EPA for the lead and copper rule revisions. That was for October 16, 2024. So here are some more results from this last study. On the left, you see a map of our distribution. Like I said, we were able to hit 37 neighborhoods throughout the city. And we also have our distribution of sites by district. Our goal was to have an equal distribution among the 5 districts, but that was unable to happen because we had our lowest turnout rates was in District E, which is in New Orleans East, as well as the West Bank of District C, which is everything on the other side of the river. This was a big point to us, and we learned about how the need for increased community outreach in certain neighborhoods and maybe more in-person events in order to engage more people to sign up. We also show our distribution of homes by the build years. We had homes built from 1820 all the way to 2023 that participated in the study. And for our reference line is the 1986 federal ban on lead plumbing materials, which was enacted with amendments to the Safe Drinking Water Act. We found that 92% of homes that were sampled in this study were built before the ban. And that is relevant because lead enters water systems through the leaching of pipes. And if your pipes were not replaced or are disturbed, even if it's city or public line or private lines that are disturbed, that could increase your lead intake. So all the water that is leaving sewage and water boards treatment plants is free of lead, but it's when it travels through the system. So the ages of the homes and the pipes in our system have a great effect on the amount of lead that you could be consuming, because you could always replace it if not. So on October 11th, the day before our report release, the Sewage and Water Board was nice enough to release their citywide New Orleans lead service line inventory. And this was due by the October 16 date. But it was great to see before we presented our results. This showed that 15,000 customers were identified with lead pipes. And all the gray is the unknown. So at that point in time, they showed that 119,000 customers had an unknown service line material. So even though this is a 1-to-8 ratio on identification, and that it is a little disheartening to see, we do believe that overall this is a great resource that will be continued to be updated. And it is an easy way for residents to check if it's the utility side or the customer side that has an issue, and that they can better work with the utility to solve their contamination issues. But overall, this supports our testing results and highlights the fact that thousands of New Orleanians are consuming lead in their drinking water unknowingly, and that some work at all levels of government and with our community organization needs to be done in order to help educate residents in the city to learn how to better protect themselves. So then next is study number 3 is our 2024 Cancer Alley residential testing study. So for this study, we did 7 metals and 18 PFAS compounds. This testing period was right after the lead study, so November to December. And then we had to do some additional testing this week. So about 10 weeks of collections. We had 5 great fellows collect samples from kitchen sinks, all the way from St. James down to Plaquemines Parish. And we were able to test 107 households across the 7 parishes. And because we were working outside of our Orleans bubble, we recruited 6 parish-specific community organizations to come work with us to be able to help with the outreach so that the residents of those parishes could connect with community leaders and members that they trusted and respected in order to connect with us on this. And so our key findings from this study will be released on May 23rd, 2025, but I wanted to give a little sneak peek of the distribution of our sites. As we can see, again, we were going for an equal distribution, but because we had already done testing in New Orleans, there was a bigger interest, and we were on a time limit of needing to finish the study by December. So we do have an unequal distribution, but this does just show, again, like how we had the outreach issues with the lead study, about how more can be done to be able to reach some more rural areas like Plaquemines, which is the most rural and divided parish that we have in the state. And so even though we weren't able to test as much as we wanted there, we still were able to build some great relationships that we know if we did return to Plaquemines, we would be able to have some greater participation. And so we're looking forward to working with all of these parishes again, because so many people were excited because they feel like they're overlooked as compared to Orleans Parish. So this was a great opportunity to show that we aren't just a New Orleans-focused organization, but we want to support the greater New Orleans region. So our lessons learned is that large-scale water sampling is possible and it's impactful. In just over a year, or just under a year, we were able to test 250 households and get their results back to them in a timely manner so they can know how to protect themselves and their families, as well as educate their surrounding community so that they can learn as well. And so we learned that many residents are unaware of specific contaminants in their water, but they do not trust the tap water in Louisiana. And this is due to them physically seeing pollution that is being spread by industry, as well as the many advisories that we get from our water utilities regarding the quality of our water. We've also learned that water contamination affects all of those in Southeast Louisiana, and this is regardless of race, income, or education. And that it's an issue that we're all facing and we should all be working together to tackle. Also, that outreach must be both broad and targeted, as we saw that some areas lack strong community organizing, and they're also distrusting of certain agencies that are government or non-government organizations. And so that we know that we're going to work hard to make sure that we advocate for our rural population that often does not have a voice when it comes to these things. And then our next steps is that we will continue to expand our outreach, our testing, and specifically our collaboration with the Sewerage and Water Board of New Orleans. We will build up our educational resources and try to make them accessible to the region as a whole, and not just those that live in the city. And we'll continue trying to work with local government to advocate for stronger protections and at least serve as an accountability when it comes to water quality as we see moving forward so that we can ensure safe drinking water for all. So I want to thank you guys for listening to our presentation, and you can find all of our reports at nolawater.org, and you can join our newsletter. Thank you.
I'm sure you guys have burning questions, but let's hold the questions until the end. So we'll now introduce Dr. Tiong Aw. He was born and raised in Malaysia. He studied environmental engineering in his bachelor's and got a PhD in microbiology, right, in Singapore. And you've been at Tulane since 2016. He has multi-million-dollar grants from the EPA studying viruses. He did an amazing study about COVID in the water supply. I'm so excited to hear more about his work. Thank you so much.
Thank you for such a great introduction, and I'm so excited to be here. And even though I have been here since 2016, actually this is my first time visit Loyola campus. So neighbors, right? I'm here to talk about water quality and health, and I choose this topic because it's closely related to what Taya has presented about our drinking water, the contaminants in our drinking water. So before that, I have some water trivia. First, where does the water coming out of your tap in New Orleans come from? I'm sure you already have the answer. Mississippi River, right? The Mississippi River. And the second question is, in which cities were students enrolled in public school prevented at some point from drinking from water fountains or tap water due to a concern about lead contamination? A, Flint, Michigan, Sabril, Ohio, Baltimore, Maryland, Jersey City, New Jersey, or all of the above?
The above.
All of the above, right? So, and true or false? More people have a mobile phone than safe water.
True.
True? Yes, because about 89% of the population is projected to have a smartphone in 2023, whereas only 60% of the world has access to safe water. So, a little bit background about myself, and I was born and raised in Malaysia, and I have been drawn to engineering, biology, and chemistry. And to combine all these interests, I pursue my undergrad in University of Technology Malaysia in environmental engineering, focusing on water and wastewater infrastructure. And after graduating from my undergrad, I worked as an environmental engineer designing water and wastewater treatment facilities. And after working for almost 2 years, I developed an interest, research interest in microorganisms, which all the water and wastewater system monitor. And I decided to go back to school, and I moved to Singapore to pursue my PhD career and in environmental microbiology, but still retain my interest in water and wastewater infrastructure. So my PhD dissertation focuses on water reclamation in Singapore, and I explore advanced treatment technology in managing pathogens, in particular viruses, and also potential water reclamation poses on public health risks. So my research field is relatively new, and previously the environmental study mainly focused on chemical contaminants and also hazardous waste. And traditionally, testing water for microorganisms depends on a laborious cell culture method. But recent advancement in molecular biology enable scientists to identify any genetic material in water. So like techniques such as PCR allow us to detect any genetic material in waters, and that really facilitate our identification of microorganisms, especially pathogens in water. So after my PhD, I had the opportunity to advance my research training in the United States. So I moved from a tropical country to Michigan in the middle of the winter. So I continue my research at Michigan State University, advancing analytical methods for monitoring microbial pathogens in water. So at Tulane University School of Public Health, besides teachings, I also direct a research group focuses on environmental microbiology and water quality, and at its interface with public health. And in particular, we are interested in how ecosystem changes, such as and human activities, for example, eutrophication and pollution and climate change, influence the microbial communities in different aquatic environments. We are fascinated about how these tiny creatures, microorganisms, which are invisible to our naked eyes, could have such a significant impact on human health. And besides lab-based research, we are also interested in fieldwork. Often we collect water and wastewater samples as well as sediment samples in different natural water environment, as well as engineer water system. So water quality and health, what is the connection? Traditionally, we define water quality, safe water, and really in terms of drinking water, that what we consume. And throughout the history, we define safe water as something that is clean, right, and wholesome, which is good for you, and most importantly, do not carry any contaminants that can make you sick. So besides the supply of safe drinking water, and water is also needed for different agricultural purposes, recreation, as well as industry. And of course, water is also needed for various ecological processes. And I'm sure you all ask this question often: how is your how confident you are with the local water supply? And safe drinking water has a close connection to public health. And even in the US, safe drinking water is not always assured. For example, about 20% of the household in this country obtain drinking water from private wells. And this well water is not regulated by both a federal and a state agency. That's why the quality of these unregulated groundwater sources is currently unknown. And my research is often motivated by challenges arising from different issues surrounding water safety and sustainability. And I'm sure you all agree that water safety and safe is ongoing concern globally. So I'm a microbiologist, so we work a lot with different microorganisms, especially disease-causing microorganisms or pathogens, such as bacteria, viruses, and protozoan. And these microorganisms are both human and animal waste carry different types of disease-causing microorganisms or pathogens, and they are transmitted to human to contact with or consumption of fecal waste contaminated water, and they are excreted in high numbers in infected individuals, and they are highly potent. That means that only a few numbers of pathogens in water can cause disease. And most importantly, most of these pathogens are zoonotic. That means that they can be moving from animals to humans. So we depend on drinking water treatment to keep away pathogens from our drinking water. And water utilities often use a series of treatment processes to produce a safe drinking water. And disinfection is often the last step that's used to kill any remaining germs in our water, such as chlorination. And after treatment, water leaves the water treatment facilities and travels miles of pipes, usually underground, until it reaches to the consumers. So when water reaches to the consumers, it will enter to a complex premise plumbing in the building and carry by this complex plumbing system for different usages. So premise plumbing is a water system component within this building, including different devices such as hot water heaters, features, water features, and such as water faucets and drains that connect water from our main distribution system to the water surface line. So this is a very complex system, and keep in mind that EPA does not regulate the water quality within the premise plumbing except the lead and copper rules. And of course, this complexity of the premise plumbing also create a new water quality challenges. The presence of opportunistic pathogens in our drinking water, such as Legionella. So these pathogens cause diseases, especially in individuals with lower immune system, and they can grow and spread within our drinking water distribution system and premise plumbing, and this is very difficult to deal with because they don't have a typical exposure route, and they are not fecal associated. That means that makes our current framework for regulating and monitoring drinking water quality irrelevant. And Legionella causes Legionella disease. This is a severe pneumonia, and there are more than 43 species of Legionella has been identified and more than 20 species have been linked to human diseases. And a susceptible individual will get this Legionella disease by inhaling water contaminated with this bacteria. Susceptible population, especially smoker, elderly, and someone with a lower immune system, more susceptible in catching Legionella disease. So in the US, about 8,000 to 18,000 cases of Legionella every year. So the sources of this of Legionella bacteria usually found in warm water, especially the water that is present in our different water systems, such as hot tubs, cooling tower, air conditioning units for a large building, as well as domestic hot water system and water that we use for shower, for example, and so on. And in the United States, Legionella has been identified as the most commonly caused drinking water associated outbreaks in the US, with approximately 92% of the outbreaks. And water stagnation is one of the major factors that could enhance bacteria growth in our drinking water system. And in one of our research, we focus on the role of water stagnation in drinking water, and we to compare the concentration of this bacteria in school building plumbing during a low water use versus a normal water use. In school or in other office building, often the decreased occupancy during weekends and holidays could also increase the water residence time within the plumbing system. And these longer residence times often will enhance the bacteria growth within the water system and could cause water quality degradation problems. So in this study, we look into the concentration of Legionella bacteria in water system under low versus a normal water use condition. So the light blue represent the concentration of the bacteria in water during school break, whereas the dark blue represent the concentration of the bacteria in water during the school in section. So there is a statistically significant difference between the concentration of this bacteria during a school break versus the school in section. So this showed that the water stagnation could increase the bacteria growth within our drinking water distribution system, and this could pose a potential public health risk, especially for the student. And we also look into the role of water stagnation in office building during weekend. So as you can see, the top chart shows the concentration of the bacteria, total bacteria in waters, whereas the middle chart shows the chlorine concentration in the water system, and whereas the lower chart shows the concentration of this of Legionella bacteria detected at each location on all the sampling events. So the black color bar represent the concentration of these water quality parameters on Friday, whereas the white color bar represent the concentration of these water quality parameters on Monday. So as you can see, consistently, the chlorine concentration decreased over the weekend, and at the same time, the concentration of the bacteria were higher in water samples collected on Monday, whereas were higher in water sample collected on Monday after the weekend. Similar to Legionella bacteria, it showed the highest concentration of this bacteria in water features that have no use record throughout the sampling events. So this highlights the importance of proactive monitoring our water system in order to identify to what extent the drinking water quality problems in order to direct immediate actions to control this problem. So, in summary, while we have the Safe Drinking Water Act to address our national drinking water, but we still need to have a collective efforts of water utilities as well as building and plumbing professionals to identify areas where water quality could be an issue in order to achieve safe water for consumers at the tap. And keep in mind that even though our drinking water is treated and it is not sterile, right, and it still have a bacteria present in our drinking water. So it is important to identify areas within our water system where the control measures for preventing bacteria growth could be implemented. So I have top tips for you in order to ensure your safety. Make sure that you clean your aerators regularly and do not drink from the shower. And most importantly, determine what types of drinking water pipes you have in your building. And if you have a lead pipe, and make sure that you have a water filter. And finally, I would like to acknowledge my funding agency, mostly US EPA, and also my collaborators, both in Michigan State University as well as Purdue University, and all the water utilities in the United States that allow us to collect water samples. Thank you very much.
So maybe we'll have our speakers sit at the table, and then everyone can ask questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
What options are there for pipe materials that are much less soluble in water so that they would leak heavy metals into the water less? Are there options for other pipes?
Yes, so the main replacement seems to be copper and PVC pipes. I can personally say I replaced a lead pipe to a PVC pipe, but this was during the pandemic. It is recommended more for copper because there are more issues that we're learning about with using plastic for carrying water. But yeah, so anything, if you have a lead pipe or a galvanized or anything that's over 50 years old, it should probably be exchanged.
But copper's not that bad for piping?
Oh yeah, copper is great. It does not degrade that fast. And intake in copper, with lead and copper being studied, we're able to excrete copper a lot more easily than we're able to excrete lead. So it is a safer option. And I would also refer.
I'm sure that the city is currently implementing the replacement.
Yes, so we're currently waiting to see how the Sewage and Water Board is moving forward with replacing private lines specifically. We do believe that the city should be responsible for replacing private lines. We are waiting to hear how they're moving forward. Many other cities, especially I was just in Boston a few weeks ago, are explaining that they are replacing private lines for free. So we are hoping that, we get some results there.
I was going to ask, I'm one of those people who got the notice that said my service line is lead. And other than not drinking our water, but what should we do? How can we advocate for that?
Yes, so in terms of, I guess, at least protecting yourself, I would definitely say flush your pipes for at least a few minutes every morning before you use your water. Like he said, clean your aerators very often. I'm actually was re-inspired to clean mine today. And so in order to advocate for ourselves, when Sewage and Water Board does have filter opportunities when they're distributing, I think it's great for them to see that people are interested in having free filters. You could always call and tell the lead and copper division that you would be interested in more of that work. But you could also tell your city council members. They're the ones who really manage Sewage and Water Board on a day-to-day. In terms of that. And any opportunities that we have, we try to host a few events every year, and we're looking to host a lead and copper event this year. So in terms of staying up to date with what local organizations and what Sewage and Water Board will announce next. But we're also waiting on what's happening after that notification last fall.
So what is the main challenges that city face in replacing all the pipe?
So I think it's very clear that it's funding that's what's keeping Sewage and Water Board back. Because it's such an old system, they spend so much time replacing and repairing. So they're repairing leaks, or they're finally replacing pipes that are older than many of our grandparents and great-grandparents. And so it's constantly just, and Ayana actually wrote an article on this about how we're just using a Band-Aid to fix a broken arm. And that we're constantly just in the repair mode. So they have put a very big price on what it would be to replace all the lead pipes in the system. They've said $1 billion, which is, of course, pretty inconceivable, especially from what we pay in taxes, and that they also are dealing with other issues such as drainage. That's a big issue in the city, and the fact that now the pipes that were previously managed by the Department of Public Works has been switched to Sewage and Water Board's responsibility. So there's a lot of changes internally in the utility that we're waiting to see.
And I'm sure it's also the identification of the pipe location, right? And it's and New Orleans is the old city, but and I think that's another challenge. How can we identify which part of the pipe is actually a lead pipe? Yes.
And so when I joined the team in 2023, we were actually in an active partnership with Sewage and Water Board to help them, I guess, draft what their inventory would look like and how it could be accessible to the public. And so they were working with Blue Conduit, which is an AI company that is helping to use machine learning to help identify the likelihood of lead pipes, since we can't physically go in and identify every single pipe from looking. Because we don't have basements in this city, we don't know what the identity of a pipe is unless you physically look at it. Many people can go into their basements and scratch their pipes and identify, but we would probably need a full extraction with a plumber. So that end of the partnership was in 2023, and so that was from that December to last October was us really waiting to see, okay, what is this inventory that we weren't able to be privy to at the time, but what were they able to come up with? So a lot of what the inventory map does show is just the likelihood determined by those AI markers. So yeah, that's a pretty big way that they're helping identify.
Could you maybe comment on antimicrobial properties of copper, or if there's some other technological fixes for the piping that could have antimicrobial activity?
Yes, some of the piping material could have antimicrobial properties, but that's not 100% efficient, right? That's why within the water distribution system, the chlorination is still very important. So we need to maintain a certain level of the chlorine residues within our distribution system, instead of depending on the piping material as an antimicrobial property.
So is the answer or a cheaper alternative just to have everybody have a filter at the use source as opposed to trying to keep everything of all these miles and miles of piping?
Well, I mean, the city, especially the Sewer and Water Board, would try to maintain a amount of the chlorine residues even when your water reaches to your tap. But that's not always assured, but especially if you don't use your water for a long period of time. That's why I mentioned about the water stagnation is a critical. So make sure you flush your water, especially if you leave your homes for a long period of time to reduce any potential contaminants in your waters.
Would you say New Orleans has especially dangerous water in comparison? Because you made the list. You showed us the list of the places where lead has been found and children were told not to drink. We're not on that list, or the list that you made. So would you say that in comparison to other cities, we're more dangerous water supply?
Well, that's a good question. I would not say that the city has the most dangerous water supply, but my understanding is the challenges that faced by Sewer and Water Board is often related to the infrastructure. Like for example, especially during hurricane season, we lost the power to generate the power the system I believe that the Sewer and Water Board has done a great job in treating our water to make sure that it is safe. And of course, it also depends on our infrastructure, right? We have an aging infrastructure, and we need to upgrade all those infrastructure to make sure that it meet the high demands of our community. So
yes, I would agree and say that it really is just the challenge of infrastructure, as well as we just are an incredibly old city when you really think about it, in that we really want to maintain our old homes and things like that. And so it is just an added challenge. We have a lot of challenges, especially including like the saltwater intrusion events that are seeming to be becoming more and more regular, that even though we don't experience it here in New Orleans, in the lower Plaquemines, it is a very big issue that we are often overlooking. So I wouldn't say we even have the most dangerous water in the state, but I would say that in terms of a national outlook, I have seen New Orleans come up on like maybe some top 20 lists when it comes up to certain contaminants. And it's just because it's so many different issues, and as well as the emerging contaminants with forever chemicals, which we are still improving our way to mitigate those contaminants coming into our water supply. So a lot that could be done, but I do think that Sewage and Water Board is doing as much as they can with the systems that they have in place right now.
So what percentage of the population here drinks the tap water straight versus post-tap filtered versus bottled? I get the sense that there's not a lot of people drinking the tap water.
I can say from traveling to all these parishes, most people know not to drink directly from the tap water. Okay. We do encourage that people put on filters because we've had a lot of conversations with residents of, okay, we have issues with bottled water, and we've talked about microplastics, and it's really about just choosing which poison you want to take, and not in that way of like which do you want to sacrifice, I guess, in terms of that. So I would say most people are probably just drinking out of bottled water, but it would be great in terms of just waste and other things to use filters, but then there are accompanying costs with replacing filters.
yeah, I would say, yeah, filtering is a good option. I would say pay more attention, especially if your household have elderly or children, or even someone with a lower immune system, because those are more susceptible to different contaminants in water.
I'd like to hear a little bit more about your funding for the Water Collaborative, and from both of you, whether the turn of our government is likely going to affect your funding.
So at the Water Collaborative, most of our funding, or the great majority of our funding, is from philanthropic opportunities. So we are not too tied to federal and state funds, which is great at this time, that we're able to continue doing our work. For our 2 PFAS studies, we were funded by Aqualateral, which is an investment platform that likes to support water solutions and research. And so they're great partners. For our lead study, we were funded by Capital One Foundation and We Act for Environmental Justice. So we had a little bit of additional funds from our 2023 program with We Act. That's who connected us with Sewage and Water Board. So we used that for funding. And because of our covering of the saltwater intrusion event of 2023, we were able to get like a general grant from Capital One Foundation. So really it's just a lot of our funding comes from people liking the work that we're doing and wanting to support. And we actually recently just got some additional funding for our lead program because of the great work that we did on the study. So it really is just more people just acknowledging our work. I can say that we are very fortunate, I guess, that we weren't too reliant on federal funding. We do have the formal partnership with the EPA partnership program, which we are trying to see how that will be moving forward. But luckily, that's just not what what we're mainly tied to. So that's great.
Do water filters introduce their own contaminants into the water, like microplastics? And like, what would be the best kind, like carbon filters?
I have seen some research when it comes to microplastics ending up in them because of the filtering. I guess it could be because of it could depend on the brand and the type. And so there are many like non-plastic alternatives that you could look into.
What's the best time to do that?
I don't have a specific non-plastic brand on my mind, but I do know I've heard about like Zero Water is a good filter. I personally use the Pure Water filter. And for our lead study, we were giving out Brita faucet filters.
I saw there's a question.
Maybe I missed it, but what really drove y'all to want to study water and not like, a different aspect of environmentalism?
Okay, you can go first.
All right. And as I mentioned, I really enjoy, water is my passion because I realized that water, especially drinking water, is critical for human health. And I really enjoy this work, water research, and especially in the School of Public Health, because I can see the practical application of my research to inform policy, as well as to create a system, to relate to public health.
So for me, I can say I still have multiple interests at this point. A lot of my undergrad and graduate research has been on waste management, specifically waste diversion. So that's where, like, while I'm in school, that's what all my research is on, and then I can keep like my work research really separate. So I like having those two. Being from New Orleans, I experienced Hurricane Katrina. I've done a lot of tree plantings. With my work at the National Wildlife Federation, I was able to go and see a lot of the diversions and a lot of like marsh projects and things like that. So it really came to, my dialogue was a real turning point of being able to say, when looking at it, I was like, well, I'm from a coastal community, and I know the problems that we have. What are these other coastal communities going through? And being able to go to Southeast Asia and see those, the differing but similar issues that they had was really mind-opening, where I was like, oh, there's so much that can do with water, and how it can go from, on that trip I was like studying snails and learning about oyster farming, but also learning about wastewater management. So it really covers so much under the topic of water, that once I came back to New Orleans when the pandemic hit and I was looking for work, it was just so easy to find. I knew I wanted to work with community. I knew I wanted to work with climate education and communications. And so it seemed like, because water was the trending line throughout my life and my education, that it seemed like a perfect opportunity.
And also one, things that attract me to move to New Orleans is we are surrounded by water. And I always say that New Orleans is a natural laboratory to study water quality and how climate change impact our water, because we are surrounded by water, Mississippi River and also the Gulf of Mexico, for example.
So, putting the lead piping aside for a moment, I was wondering if you could explain a test case somewhere else that had the same issues with the quote-unquote forever chemicals as well as the microbial issues that we find in our water. So sure, we need to redo all the pipes, I get that. But let's say we did and we have all copper or PVC. Is there a test case in some other town, in some other place in the world that's had the same issues with us, and again, with both the microbes as well as the forever chemicals, that they've solved these issues? And are there any things that you guys are looking from them to help us?
I would say, at least for where else is experiencing these issues with forever chemicals, I would say every water utility in the United States, because of how widespread that the issue is here. In terms of successful, or I guess more successful case studies, I am still doing some research, and I'm even meeting with some people from Switzerland next week to learn about the systems that they have, seeing that they have a lot less industry than we do, even in Louisiana, much less like the United States, what they have going on over there. But I also have learned about how in the EU and in Canada that they're taking a different route to regulating PFAS, because there's over 15,000 or up to 15,000 man-made PFAS compounds. And in the United States, we're regulating them one by one. And so in April of last year, they released national drinking water regulations for just about 5 PFAS and then a combination of them. So we have seen in like Canada and the EU that they're regulating by class. So I think that's another good example of how that is. And they're also have stricter regulations on their industry in the first place when it comes to how often or how they discharge their waste as well. So I guess it's really, we're looking to see who's doing the best in the United States in terms of states that we're seeing as a case study. We're still in the middle of writing our report right now, but we know that we are not the guiding light at all.
Yeah, I think the drinking water issue is not just in New Orleans, it's a global issue. Especially the different contaminants, microbial and also chemical contaminants are widespread in our drinking water system. We have groundwater system as well, right? And but I would say that the awareness of the drinking water contamination, has been triggered by the drinking water crisis, right? And since then, we are more aware about our drinking water safety, especially with the lead and also other microbial contaminants in our drinking water system. So.
I was going to say that, getting back to your question about the Trump administration, is that I could see that a lot of what you do is to inform policy and set regulations and do that side of the coin. But the other side is lawsuits against the government, against whoever's creating the pollution. And I think I heard on the radio, I don't know if I'm crazy, but I heard that the federal government dropped a lawsuit about a cancer alley. Did this actually happen? Yeah, it happened just a couple days ago.
Yes.
So I think that's the thing that I'm worried about is even when we see injustice happening that we're not going to be able to do anything about it.
I was definitely disheartened by that. We worked specifically with this last Cancer Alley study with the concerned citizens of St. John, and I was able to actually meet this past Monday and do a filmed interview with Tish Taylor, who runs the organization, with her father, and just talking about her personal experiences of just constantly feeling like St. John is constantly let down. So seeing that news that case was dropped.
Can you tell us about it? Because
it's very unfortunate. I don't know too many of the details. I knew it was regarding air quality, and it was the emissions that were released by the industry in the parish, and that they were able to prove that they are exceeding certain limits, and that it is negatively harming those in the area.
It was a cancer cluster?
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
And so that is very unfortunate, and we do see that with the lead and copper rule improvements that were just released last October that were supposed to supersede the revisions that were in place from the Trump's first administration. Those are great, advancements to the lead and copper rule, which hadn't been updated in over 30 years before the 2021 update. And so that was going to lower the action level for lead down to 10 parts per billion and require all lead service lines to be replaced within 10 years from 2027. And there are resolutions in Congress right now in D.C. that is trying to repeal the lead and copper rule improvements, which is very disheartening because so far my very short career has been building up to the improvements just to see them being rescinded or attempting to be rescinded so quickly. And with the new regulations that were for the new PFAS contaminants, we were worried maybe they aren't going to enforce those regulations because so many things were just set up by the last administration but weren't put to completion. So we are worried about losing a lot of data. We are worried about not getting some resources that we were expecting, especially towards the specific human health effects and levels of PFAS. Because right now we just have the drinking water levels. We don't have the human health effect levels that are official. So we definitely are worried about the rolling back, but all we can say that's keeping us motivated is one, to remind or just showcase simply by showing the public who is rescinding these regulations. Why are they asking them? Why are they doing it? Encouraging people to reach out to their representatives so that even if we don't believe they will listen, we can at least say we told the people who represent us that clean water is a priority. And just kind of engaging more people into the policy landscape when it comes to voting, as well as showing up to city council meetings and communicating with their representatives what we can. So that's all we can do in the meantime, and download as much data and resources as we can before they're wiped away from the websites.
Yeah, I totally agree. Engaging with the community about the, safe drinking water, I think that is very critical at this moment. outreach that one, for
Do you
example.
think state and local governments will step up to fill in the gap or no?
I think they can.
Yeah.
There is an opportunity for them to do so, but it'll really just be time will tell if specifically Louisiana does step up to the plate, and if they continue to hold utilities responsible and continue to be a resource to utilities. Because with Sewage and Water Board being the largest in the state, of course they have a lot more resources, but we do believe the smaller utilities and the more rural parishes need attention as well. So yeah.
First, thanks to you both for your talks, very helpful. Did the folks at the Water Collaborative ever find themselves thinking, we sure could use the expertise of local faculty members of PubMed? Does that ever come up, and what form does that take?
Yes, so the past year I've just been doing like rounds of informational interviews with anyone who's willing and able to connect with us. We have great partnerships with the local universities. That's where we get all of our testing fellows are from local. And we work with Tulane with a lot of specific professors there. For the lead study, our technical advisor was Dr. Adrian Katner from LSU School of Public Health. And I love that this is a new relationship with Loyola that can be formalized. So we love to work with anyone who is, I guess, specifically in drinking water with that. But I do informational interviews all the time, even doing some on Monday with some past workers from the EPA who led the Office of Water for 30 years. So it's great to get both local and some more national perspectives.
It sounds like maybe talking to a political scientist about some of the issues being addressed at the state level might make sense.
Oh yeah.
And if I
Definitely.
understood you, you also take student interns.
And my research group at Tulane University, the School of Public Health, always welcome undergrad students who would like to participate in water-related research. My lab often have several undergrad students who like to gain real-world research experience regarding the water and water safety.
Thanks.
What are some of the drivers of politicians that are rejecting these restrictions? Like, what are some of the motivations?
Usually it's cost. They always want to say, oh, we don't want to up the cost of this. We've heard that specifically with replacing private lead lines, we have gotten resistance from the state legislature of using private funds for, or public funds for private goods, which is an amendment in our state constitution that prohibits that. But we do believe that this is not a private good. This is a public health emergency that has just been what we've been all aware of. We've known for centuries that lead is very dangerous for human health, and we've still allowed that for lead pipes to be installed all around the country. Nearly 10 million still remain. Yeah. So that's really the main drivers. It's just they aren't interested in using the money. It isn't specifically affecting them. And that maybe not enough of their constituents are telling them that it's a concern.
Kind of a fault question, but it bounces off what some other people have said. So a fault to my own question, just to be clear. So the question about, so this is about drinking water, but really we're talking about tap water, because you're saying most people don't actually drink tap water. So the tap water is safe, but people don't drink it. Should we make tap water less safe? Like just for like drinking water? No. Just like, because no one's drinking. Because the question is sort of like, at what level does it need to be? At what degree of safety? If most people are doing like after filtering, so like the quality of water for showering and cooking, you don't want lead in there, right? For cooking, but you probably don't care about the microbes because you're about to boil it anyways, that kind of thing. So I'm just wondering, like, does the level of purity change depending on if we're like, what's the point of doing all this if no one's going to use it anyways? Let me put it that way, maybe.
Well, I agree, but keep in mind that we use tap water for other purposes too, for showering, for cooking, brushing your teeth, for example. So we need to make sure that this water is treated to be used for portable purposes. So.
And I would just say that even though people avoid it as much as they can, even if you still have a cut and you take a shower, that is still you being exposed to that water, even if you don't drink it at all.
So I guess the follow-up is like, is this a distrust thing, or is the water actually unsafe? That's part of the question.
The distrust.
I would say distrust, similar to how we have a low recycling rate in the city. It's partly because people don't believe that the recycling is happening, so they just don't recycle with the city. But it's like feeding into itself of, well, the recycling rate is so low because people don't participate. So it's kind of like the water has had times where it was unsafe. We get the boil water advisories. We had the full citywide, the first one in years, after the snowstorm. And so we're seeing that because there is evidence that at times it is unsafe, that people just believe it's always unsafe. But it's not always unsafe, and it does vary by the household, specifically with like lead, of how much contaminants are. But we do believe that what's coming out from the treatment processes are being cleaned to the standards at which they're required to be. And that's the fault, is that the standards aren't health-based. So yeah, it's just it feeds into itself.
I think with that we can thank our speakers. Thank you, audience.
Thank you very much.